Truth Bombers Podcast.
Truth Bombers Podcast.
The group chat turned podcast with your hosts, Rus, Lockie, and BJ.
Boys,
Lads,
Crack in.
let's crack in.
She's already down. She's already half
She's
down.
already coming down.
always mine, isn't it?
You sticking the same?
Yeah, Dylan Clark, one more week for me. Lockie?
Who have we got here? I've got the new recruit, Caldwell. Not so new, I guess.
Here we go.
My boy Herd. Look, I may have gone a bit hard on him last week after re-listening. I was a bit passionate. Nothing against old mate, but I hope he does play for Bombers one day, and I hope he is as good as his dad. Just, I don't think he should be on the list yet.
You call it as you see it, and you think he's not quite at the standard, and that's fine. That's
Couple
your
more
opinion.
years in the VFL, maybe we can get there.
And that's the beauty of an opinion piece podcast, is you can't be wrong. It's your opinion. I do want to draw attention to the fact that after Russ's big episode last week, he's come in with a fresh haircut and a collared shirt.
Yeah, well.
So we get a scarf sort of behind us, and we get quite the setup. Cheers, boys.
Crack in.
Good win against the Dogs, which we're going to crack on about in a second.
Do you smell that?
It's a flag.
It's a flag.
Now,
I don't want to call it early.
Mick Malthouse.
That's
He
what I
has
was-
come out this week.
Herald Sun, he said we're the best team in the comp right now.
I think that's just putting the Mozz on us.
Yeah,
Oh,
100%.
God, talking us up so much that, they're going to win a flag just to put us down. I reckon.
A guy that's coached our two biggest rival teams, it's like his last mission.
Yeah.
Take down the Bombers.
I did like every single person that came out and would just flat out disagree with him and said, and point out you're the only person in the street who's made that call.
Oh, we've all made it. Yeah, you've been making it for 4 years every year.
I stand by a flag this year.
I'd love to see a flag this year. I'd take an early flag. Even if it...
Oh, would ya?
Yeah.
Last year, maybe not.
And hopefully this year as well is a flag that we can actually go to, right? I think we've done well. Bide our time. We don't want to play an interstate grand final. We want to win one here.
Did you tick the box for guaranteed
on my membership?
on your membership?
I haven't, but I'll
I was
do some
close to it.
disgusting things to get a ticket.
We'll write a letter.
Next year, I reckon I'm ticking that box. I reckon the next year, after watching the practice game, looking at some of the young blokes, I was like, cool, yes, we could win a flag this year if we get a lucky run, blah, blah, blah. But you look at, some of the young guys we know need a year or a couple bit more year size put on. I'm like, geez, we're in the window next year.
I
The year
feel...
after.
Given, we're almost at 50 followers on the Instagram page now, boys. We've got 12 subscribers on the YouTube. We've had about 200 views. We keep this trajectory up. We might just be able to get in as media.
How are the media parts going? You said it
Get a pass.
Yeah.
Lanyard.
Who knows? I'm sure there's criteria. But I'm not above writing in and trying to get media passes.
I did look up how to get an actual press pass. We're 10 years away.
Oh, you have to have a decade of
You
experience.
need a decade of experience.
Well, we have had this group chat going for a while.
Yeah.
With accredited media sources. So you're accredited for 10 years before they'll let you in.
Well, look, we got to have goals, right? So we've got a lot on the menu to talk about. Obviously, the biggest and the best thing we want to chat about is the game that we had with the Dogs on Wednesday night. We've got a new segment today, which is not from Russ. Lockie's Locks. Look forward to that. We're going to talk through some of the other pracky results as well. And the girls, the VFLW team that continues to stride forward with just enormously big scores.
And around the grounds, as always.
Around the
Wrapping up
grounds.
The news for the week.
And we've brought back questions without notice, which
Quick draw questions.
Quick draw questions.
Questions
so-
without notice is an ACN segment. I have not stolen it. I have merely molded it into our...
I better cross that out on the run sheet for next week. But of all the segments Russ has brought to the table, this is my favourite one. And hopefully we have a week where he doesn't produce something off his phone to play into the microphone. Boys.
Another's game.
Yeah. You try enough segments, one of them's got to hit. Essendon 12-9-81 versus the Dogs 11-8-74. 7-point win on Wednesday down at the Hangar. And a couple of good things that we want to touch on, a couple of things that we still need to work on, which were blaringly obvious, and we'll go through the best. But I definitely feel like the Mozz that the Dogs have had on us for the last few years. I know it's a practice match, but we've beaten them twice now the last 3 times we've played them, and I want to fucking win all the practice matches.
Yeah.
So whether, extended quarters and extended bench, and you got guys playing limited minutes and whatever else. The Dogs had all their big guns playing that game. And not only did we match them, and I think the thing I liked the most about that game was we trailed all day, and we didn't do that drop the head, I think especially in the second quarter they kicked 3 or 4 in a row, and we answered with 3 or 4 right back. And that's the kind of football that I want to see us play, is not this, we know what kind of Essendon's rolling up in 5 minutes and we get 3 goals conceded and it's kind of game over from that point. So,
yeah, absolutely.
First thoughts?
Having watched the game, I think that although it was a practice match, I felt like there was enough intensity there. So the effort, I guess, as you just mentioned, the list that both teams had was relatively full. So it wasn't like it was a half of a VFL squad there that was playing one another. I like that we kept our pressure up. As you said, in the third quarter, or sort of second to third, they got a run on of goals, and we sort of just kept pushing, kept pushing, stayed in the game, and then it looked like we broke it open in the last quarter, which is a really positive sign. I
thought we dominated the first half, the first quarter. Sorry, I know they got back by the end of it, but the pressure was on there. You could see, and that's what we want to see from us boys: getting early, not wait till second quarter, wait till we're behind, like we have been the last couple of quarters.
You have to kick 6 in a row just to get back in the game.
Yeah, even the practice games, it looked like the guys were going for those second tackles, the second efforts. It was the high intensity game that we expect. One thing, Waitman from Bulldogs, jeez, I still can't get over his face. I hate him so much from when he got
polarizing players.
when he got a free kick, I was like,
here we go again. Give him 5 more in front of goal. I just will never get over that game. Just his face. He handled one over the line, and I was up in my couch. Do
you think if a player is below 5'8", there shouldn't be high tackles on that player?
Absolutely.
That Cody Waitman, interesting. You should bring that up. That for me was, we've spoken a lot about Laverde being that sort of kind of not number one, but playing that lockdown role. I thought that was an interesting choice that he went to Wakeman. But I thought he pretty much peppered him out of the game. Took some good marks, got in the way.
I thought from watching the game, quite a few of our defenders actually switched. So at times you did see Laverde on him. I know at one stage I saw Ridley on him. And then you've got Kelly, who came over to play that role, to lock down a small forward, played on him as well. And I thought that with Laverde as well, and even Stewart, at times, they all sort of rotated to Norton. It was another one that, I saw Ridley on at some stage, Laverde. So I guess it's good that we've got a bit of flexibility back there, and it's not just one player that's required to actually lock down, and if they don't, they kick a bad goals. It's sort of like, okay, we've got a few options now, which is good.
I thought the defence worked really well, and I've been quite sceptical of how the defence is going to go, especially Stewart. He had another pretty solid game and was pretty impressive.
Did
that hurt? I'll call it how I see it. That's how I see it. It's
it's good to explain that it's not just you're out to get Stewart. It's
exactly. And I felt like Kelly just come in and it looks like he's actually cemented a place in there. The whole team looked like they're working together. Kelly was even out muscling Norton off the ball at one stage. So as though he's not a big tall, at least he can take on the big talls and he can throw his weight around and get him off the ball. The intercept marks were amazing. Ridley
really took that hanger. Yeah, I think that, and we can talk about the things that went really well, I guess, which is essentially what we're doing. That half-back line, that half-back press for me was the most impressive thing we did all day. One of the things that I have that worked really well, also one of the things that I didn't like is our half-backs doing the scoring. I think Hind kicked 2, whereas our big key position forwards just didn't really fire.
I put that as the forwards did not look comfortable, and I'll get back to what my biggest letdown for the day is, but our talls did not perform well, and it was the smalls and in the mids that kicked the goals, which we've kind of suspected. We didn't know if our talls could actually handle the pressures of the number 1 and number 2 defenders, because they've always had someone else to take those defenders.
Look, and we finished with 12-9, which is good. But there was a time I think we were 1-6, and that ultimately is the problem that we face, is you just kick yourself out of the game like that,
which we have been.
And that was
other than last year was what we've been doing.
But that was guys that we've talked about in this show, that their key is how reliable their set shot is. Langford was spraying and missing. Dev Smith hit the post. Jones missed from a couple straight in front. So if we can clean that up and make the most of those good opportunities, like easier opportunities arguably, and add another 4 or 5 goals on teams in the first and second quarter, like that's going to put us, it sounds stupid, but ahead for the game, you know, mentally as well as on the scoreboard. Right?
Yeah, not chasing our tails.
Yeah.
Well, let's make this really clear cut. Let's start with the negatives. Yeah, I've got one, and I thought...
Ironic.
Do you
want it quick, or do you start with
I've kept it to one. Opposition's ball movement. Now, I think that's why teams get such a good run-on of goals occasionally, is that it just looks like we can't stop them moving the ball from their back half into their forward half, and they kick goal. And I thought I saw a lot of that in the first half. In the second half, it changed a little bit. We'll sort of get to that. But yeah, I worry when teams can kick through our defence and through the middle and then get an easy shot on goal. And it's sort of like defending from your back half should be the easiest position to defend from because they have to take it the length of the field. That's something that I was a little bit worried about, and I saw a bit in the first half.
So BJ Goddard, who was commentating for KO.
Great comments. The flattest commentary I've ever heard.
Yeah, he's about up and about as Archie Perkins on a Sunday morning making 25-second
Mate, they must have paid him $23.95 like they paid Archie Perkins. Same performance.
But one thing he did keep saying, and I think it was the best way to put it, we just kind of looked like we were out there guarding grass at some points. And that's exactly what happened. It was short kick mark, and they just picked us apart.
Yep.
And yeah, when we are playing against those top sides, we can't just allow that back six, as strong as it is, to have to do all the defending. Like, we need that forward press to really be, you know, and when the ball's on the ground, it's completely different. Yep. You got guys like, you know, Snelling and all those other blokes we've talked about hitting the ground. And that was probably the positive, even though guys like Francis and Wright didn't really fire, they were still doing enough most of the time to make a contest to bring the ball down, where guys like Snelling could go to work. But that to me is... That's what two-way running is. When the ball's on the ground, there's a chance to kick a goal and they're going 100%. You need to be going 100% when the ball's going the other way as well.
Well, talking about 2 meter Peter, he was my big letdown for the whole game. For me, he's a confidence player. He needs to get his confidence up. If you're not going to fire in a practice match, when are you going to fire? He looked flat. He was going up for contest, was like getting muscled off the ball. He was muscled out of the contest. Went up for about 5 marks, didn't land one of them. I was very worried about what I saw. No second effort. You know, he got stripped of the ball in the midfield at one stage and was looking around while everyone else is running around, already on the ball again. I don't know, man. He definitely can't take the number 1 defender in my mind, and he's going to have to cop that the first at least 5 games, you'd think. And yeah, I don't know if he's up for it.
Here's one thing I'd say with that, and I was very disappointed with his game as well. At least he got his hands to a lot of it.
Like you said, he did get it down.
Yeah, and he brought to ground.
He wasn't getting outmarked, turning it straight over.
So if you think of him like a Mason Cox sort of role, he's so tall. Mm-hmm. If he can get his hands to it and clunk them, he's going to have a really good game. And worst case, if he can bring it to ground, hopefully guys like Smith, guys like Snelling, Wanganeen, who we'll get to, I'm sure, will be able to obviously like capitalise off that. So I did think his game is very disappointing, but hopefully he can build into the season. And if he gets a run on like he did with the Dogs last year, he can have a big game.
I don't think it's an unfair expectation to think of a bloke that's playing top-level football, if you're getting both hands to the ball, that you mark the ball. Yep. Like, if you're getting both hands to the ball, granted, there's going to be spoils, but there wasn't a lot of, like, he had it in the Dukes and someone just spoiled last minute.
He was getting out-muscled in the contest.
Just in not great positions, and then just kind of sticking one hand up, and at that point, it's the best you can hope for is to bring it to ground and doesn't get marked.
Yep.
Yeah.
While I won't say that Wright was necessarily... And I don't think guys necessarily disappointed me. I think all the talks around Shield and how much he's just been tearing it apart, I probably had high expectations of what I expected to see from his game. And he was there and thereabouts. And when he did have the ball, like, he looked like he's cleaned up his disposal.
Didn't look like he was giving 110.
He just didn't set it on fire. And look, we know he's had the quad soreness, right? So there could be a bit of managed minutes there, just getting some run back through. But for me, the other one was Francis. And I was terrified in that first quarter when he went down, and seemed to take him a while to come back off, because he has had such a shit-ass run with injuries. But he seemed to come back on. But again, just like kind of thereabouts in a few contests, but not really.
He's been almost there all day. And that was in the end of the last third.
And who knows? Maybe there are some guys that are like, this is not the game to go back with the flight and be out for 4 weeks, right? So it's not even an official practice match, right, as part of the Amy Cup. But yeah, those are guys that I think we have high expectations for a reason, and we know that they're capable, and just I think all we're really asking for is we just want to see it.
Absolutely. Moving on to the positives.
There's a lighting issue.
Went flat.
Where's it? You got your charger?
No. I thought I was full.
Go on, Locke. Let's move the positives.
Alrighty. I've got a couple, so I'll keep it fairly short.
Negatives?
Positives.
Oh, positives.
Ridley's intercepting. I feel like with Kelly playing that lockdown role on a small defender, Laverde obviously is like maybe a lockdown taller role.
Yep.
Stewart, I thought, who had a good game. It allows Ridley to read the flight of the ball, which he does so well. And I counted 6 to 8 intercept marks. He took that specky on the wing or on our half forward line. I thought he just had an absolute cracker.
Absolutely.
High pressure second, if we're just talking about like how the game looked, I thought our pressure actually ramped up in the second half.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the reason in the end that we actually got the lead and obviously held it, was because we actually stopped their ball movement a little bit. We pressured them a little bit better before they could chip us apart or get through our lack defences. So I thought they were, really positive signs.
Yeah, I had the thing that I liked all day was our halfback line.
Yep.
For me, and we'll get to best on, but Mcgrath was best on, especially in the first half. He was prolific. He just felt like he was everywhere, winning plenty of his own ball, there to assist run. Like Hind looks like he's going to have another incredible year, looks super fit, couple of goals. That's what I want to see. You know, that is our game plan, is that break line, 45, hit targets, move forward. So it looks like that's, what we're going for this season, and it looked good. We just got to capitalise on the opportunities that half-back line's creating.
Yeah, I put down the half-back line for me as well. When we have that sort of fast transition of play, sometimes the teams can get behind the ball and read it and shut us down. And at times we do go backwards and we go sideways, so we don't know what to do. And there was a great point made that it looks like when that happens, it was sort of in the second quarter, Merritt had this kick. There was this one of those creative kicks that could just penetrate through the lines.
Yeah.
And
kicks it into the centre.
And then they get a goal. So it really looks like they're trying to use people like Merritt and Mcgrath, like elite kicks, to actually, when we do get shut down, like Hindy's not going to run out. What happens when we get shut down? All right, we get the best kicks on the half-back line to open up the defence and then make space, and then that's how we go into transition. So if we're going to put Merritt out on the half-back line, normally that's somewhere you put someone to die with the older blokes, but I think they're using it as an attacking way to go forward with such depth in the midfield.
I did call it that Mcgrath would push into a half-back role instead of it just being a pure clearance player. Yeah. And it looks like him and Merritt sort of adopting that, okay, you could take a centre clearance or you could take a clearance around the ground, but you push back at the first sign, and then ball use out of our half-back, so important. If we can kick through lines instead of just relying on Hind and maybe Redmond, it gives us so much more to actually work with out of our back line.
Last week we said that, look, it looks like Mcgrath for captain and blah blah blah. And one of the things that I asked you boys was, can he be captain if he doesn't have a concrete spot? And for me, what I saw on the weekends, he's a halfback. Yep. I thought he crushed it, and we'll go here now, may as well. He was my best on ground.
Yep.
And I think that we found his position. I liked Langford on the wing as well. Played there for quite a bit. I feel like that kind of for those two guys, and we talk about setting up into the forward. I thought that was.
Langford's been a bit of a utility. It was interesting hearing Goddard speak about Langford at one stage and how he played all his junior footy as a forward. He was always been a key forward. Came to the Bombers and said, I want to be a midfield, and then worked really hard with the team, worked really hard with the midfield coaches to get a spot in the midfield. But it's got to the point now where it's like, mate,
we need a forward.
We're so stacked that a fringe mid is not going to make that midfield anymore, and he's gone back and actually cemented a spot on that wing or in the high forward. So
he's another one of those players that if for whatever reason the opposition we're coming up against we're just not matching up well with, he is another option that you could just fucking chuck Langers in there and see if he can just big body out and see what happens. For me, Mcgrath was best on, Ridley was second, Snelling third. I thought Snell had a great game. Every time he got the ball, I thought of you saying that he would never be the player Zaharakis was
Well, yeah,
number
that's-
11. And every time he popped
Prove
up,
me wrong.
every time he
It was
popped
just
up,
a
I was
practice
like,
match. Just a practice match.
No, but I think he showed those glimpses that he has what it takes to be that special kind of player.
yeah. And then Nick Hind was unlucky for me not to get in my top 3.
Yeah, I found it's really hard to do a 3-2-1. I had exactly the same players, but my 3 was Ridley, my 2 was Snelling, who ended up kicking 3 goals and lots of pressure, a few clearances, and I had Mcgrath as my 1. But I had unlucky as Merritt. Thought he had a really good, consistent game, as he always does. Perkins
Friend
chipped
of the
in.
show.
Yeah, friend of the show. Kicked a couple of goals and actually linked up well from the guys kicking out a half back. He would sort of push up the ground a little bit as a half forward. And I thought Stewart had a great game. I thought there was only 1 or 2 times where I thought he was actually beaten. And sometimes his, I guess, worry is that he's not a great ball user out of the back line, but he didn't try to bite off too much. He sort of just used that chip sideways kick, not into danger, but sort of releasing kick. And it sort of, I thought he had a great game.
And look, if that play that you just mentioned of having Merritt and Mcgrath as those like set up backline kicks, then it's like, Stuart, your job is just to 45 to that. Like, you don't have to make this big play. Just give it to the guys who will.
Yeah.
You know. Your 3-2-1?
I had Rids for number 1 for me. I just loved him just mopping up everything in the back line.
Was it the hanger?
No, not even that. Just it was just everywhere. Like, he just reads the play well. And now that we've got someone like we spoke about Kelly being in there to take that man in, he plays the best when he's just roaming around reading play and not having to worry to shut anyone down. And it just proves that he's a lead at that.
All that working with that sprint coach has got his explosiveness in the quads. Yeah.
Heard first.
Sitting on blokes. Yeah.
I had Mcgrath as number 2, like we've already spoken about. I had Langers as my 3rd. 4th, I put down Snell, and then an unlucky Wanganeen. I only played one quarter, but geez, he was playing for his spot in that last quarter. And grant you, everyone had sort of taken the gas off a little bit in the 4th quarter, but he did everything he could possibly do to get himself into that team.
Into the team. He's been given his spot, obviously, on the list, but yeah.
His first touch is like breaking through a pack, doing the 360s around to kick a goal on his first touch. He's shown that he's got the footy IQ to actually play first grade, and can actually play with, AFL first team players.
Hold himself there.
I think this takes us nicely into my next segment. Benny, are you going to talk me into this one?
Yeah, I will. The one other thing that I don't want to see this season is Aaron Norton's fucking headband. It looked shit ass. Wanganeen's a really great segue because we do have a new segment and we're calling it Locks. And so what we're doing is Lockie's going to give us our best fringe players who he thinks should be a shoo-in for the following week. For round 1 or for the practice match?
For round 1. I'm going to go big call.
Good.
Wanganeen in round 1. Okay, I think
that's a big loss.
Seeing him in that practice match and seeing him in the intra club the week before, he's done enough. He has shown really good glimpses, and at the end of the day, Tip and Woody is not going to play round 1. We need a small electric forward, and I think he can play that role. So he's a lock for round 1 for me, even though obviously he's a new player to our system. I think he gives us something that's completely different to someone like Smith or someone like Snelling as our like small forward.
He's a bit of that like Shy Bolton kind of.
Yep, absolutely.
It's pretty good to see them actually make the list. Like, I heard Wanganeen, his dad talk on the radio after the match, and or the next day, and how happy he was, and the fact we didn't pick him up in the draft and we made him earn his spot. He didn't get there because he was Wanganeen's last name. I'm not going to get on other people on the list that could go onto that system.
Don't wind him up, Benny.
Russ's Rats coming on.
But, with COVID for the last 2 years, and we had an injury of, I can't remember what it was called. Having an injury, molecular injury? Molecular? No.
Navicular?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, bone in the foot.
Having
that's that
injury,
shitty bone at the top of the ankle, isn't it?
Yeah, it gets very little blood flow. Very hard to recover from.
The bloke's played 4 games in the last 3 years. And to come out and play at this level in a practice game like that, and to show that you have what it takes, like, to show you there's raw talent there.
Was he playing in the Sandful though? Has he been playing in the Sandful? No, not at all.
He's 18 years old.
Okay.
He's finished up school last year. He's trained a little bit with the Bombers here and there, but hasn't been able to play, the TAC Cups and all those kind of stuff. A handful of games in the last 4 years.
Yeah.
All right, and this leads me to the next player, and this is a lock not to play round one, okay? I've got Waterman, which is really harsh, okay? He didn't play on Wednesday, although he played for our VFL side. I think with our forward line dynamic...
Locked out, we could call this.
Yeah, he is locked out round one. He will not play. I think with our forward line dynamic, I just can't see him playing a role. I think Langford can play as that like third tall sort of option. You've got Wright potentially is playing as a tall. You've got Francis potentially. Kane Baldwin, who's obviously sort of pushing towards that best 22 spot. I just can't see him having a role that they're going to run with. Like we've got now Smalls that are going to be picked in front of him.
You think
he's definitely fringe. I agree with that.
Jones plays because he's Jones and he's the key forward that we're working to develop over time. You think Wright plays purely because he's the tallest marking target.
And he can pinch and ruck.
We like
that option.
And then after that, I guess we are kind of looking at mid and small forwards. And I guess Waterman does, and I called him Alex last week. Apologies, Alec Waterman. I think that's a great call, and I think he would be unlucky though because those key forwards that have unfortunately we're going to look to build around, they're going to be guys that even if they're not having great games, probably still get picked.
Yep.
And they're going to get picked at his expense. I agree with that.
Russ, thoughts?
Yeah, he's always going to be that fringe player. I've always liked the way he goes about it, so I've always put him more in that sort of... We haven't had a full squad most of last year, so I always see him in that best 22. But this year, you're right, it's hard to slot him in, especially with that dynamic. And I think we can go more electric Smalls than we are sort of a consistent... Like Langers is out here, I reckon he starts easily. Smith's out, I reckon he starts, but I reckon, Langford and Smith will always start before Waterman.
Guelphy in or out? Out. I actually thought he was pretty impressive.
I thought he had a decent game, but again, I think I see him sort of like Waterman. He's like, when he's playing, I'm happy, but there's other blokes ahead of him at the club at the moment. Like, who do you take out of your best 22?
Well, exactly. I mean, we haven't even talked about Sam Durham, right, as a guy that we all sort of thought was
he played in the VFL as well.
I was intrigued to see. I thought they were at first injury prone, or like if they were injured, to see him still play VFL, it just shows you how much we have at the club that we're still trying to test out.
Though I guess it's an interesting because I think we played with an extended bench too. So if you're playing with an extended bench and you're still playing in the VFL, but again, someone that came in halfway through last year, thought he finished the season incredibly. Just wonder if that's a little bit more of that still adjusting to the fitness level required over the summer and stuff like that. But
yeah, I think with Durham, I think he needs to put on a little bit of size. And if we're talking about wingers, I think we've actually got a lot of wingmen now who can play that role. If you look at Cox potentially playing that role, talk about Langford maybe training as that sort of wingman maybe that can go to half forward. Obviously Durham's one, but then we've got, we picked up, who's the other player we picked up? No, not Hobbs, who just got the list spot.
Nick Martin.
Martin, he plays that wing role
he plays
as well.
quite a bit in the midfield and the wing there.
Yeah, so it's sort of like, okay, well, if you don't put on size and you can't sort of match it with the best sort of, I guess, in the league, do you have that role? And I like Guelphy, I like Durham. I'd love to see them in the side, but I think it's a great thing if they're not playing because it means, how strong is our team at the moment if these guys aren't getting into our best 22?
Do you think Guelphy's closer than Durham?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nice one, mate.
Yeah.
Just some other results in the practice that I want to pull attention to. Obviously, we did the ladder and our ladder predictor in episode 4, and interestingly enough, all the kind of results sort of indicate that we were right on the money. Carlton just beat St Kilda. I think we had them finishing 12th and 13th or something respectively. The D's took a huge dump over North Melbourne, so that's like 1 over what I wanted 18. I think we had 16th, so you'd expect. Hawks and Pies draw, arguably 17 versus 18, exactly. Just as bad as each other. Freo pumped West Coast again. We've sort of said that we see Freo coming up the ladder, West Coast fading down. Interesting news with Jack Darling again there.
I'll pay some respect to Locke there because I was sort of fighting on that Freo call, them going up a little bit. But yeah, I think you're right. Seeing all the pre-season stuff that they're going through, some of their players they're developing, I reckon you're right. I reckon they do make a big move up the ladder this year.
Yeah, and then probably a couple of surprise ones. Brisbane defeated Adelaide by 80 again. We sort of said top 8 side versus a potential bottom side there. Suns defeat Port by 20. GWS beat the Swans by 5 goals. And Richmond defeat the Cats.
This is what I'd say. Suns do very well at the start of the year. Yeah, so normally they're
West Coast, the last 2 years, opening rounds. That's when West Coast were good, of course.
Yeah. Normally you'd see them and it's like, oh, they've won 3 of their first 4 or 3 of their first 5. So I think they really gear themselves towards the start of the year to build some confidence with the group, to build some momentum, to build some like drive for supporters, like to actually sort of build their membership base. Unfortunately, we normally see them drop off. So I don't think that result...
Peaking too early as well. Going too hard in preseason, coming out super fit, but you can't hold that level of consistency for 24 weeks.
Yeah, so I don't think that result means much. GWS defeating Swans. Now, Russ, you put GWS in your top 4.
No, Sydney.
Sydney, I did.
Wasn't it originally you had GWS pushing
up? I had them pushing up, but I didn't have them in top 4.
Okay,
I had Swans as my top 4.
Yeah, like GWS at the end
I don't think they're dropping off for sure.
End of last year,
I don't think they're dropping off.
Pushed from well outside the 8 to make the 8. They beat Swans in the first final. I think those two teams on their given day can beat each other.
Yeah.
I do think Swans overall have more upside, but GWS have some elite talent. If they're fringe or their bottom sort of line players can actually play roles, and they'll be a scary side.
Yeah, they got decimated with injuries the first half of the season. Like they didn't know how they were going to fit teams together at one stage. So that's why I saw them come back strong at the end of the year. I thought they'd still be in that top 8 side for sure.
Well, I hope they do have a good year because, as always, we look forward to pillaging their list when it comes to trades and drafts on GWS. Richmond and the Cats.
At the end of the day, again, it's a preseason match. I think Richmond could be a great side again. I think they've got enough premiership players. They've got 22 players on the list, something like that.
Did Dusty play?
Dusty did play. He got through unscathed. So I think that...
How did he look? Did you watch it?
I didn't watch it. I saw highlights. So yeah, I can't say a lot on that game. But I think it's one of those games where, again, like Geelong and Richmond could both have great seasons. I probably have more faith in Geelong.
Again, when we look at these, how we sort of compare them, like I see Richmond and I see the Cats sort of on a similar trajectory. Like, yes, they've been so good for so long. Is this 1 year too many for both those sides? So it's interesting they played each other and see that result because you kind of think Richmond, yes, they could still have a crack, but maybe the 1 year behind when they can. I think Cats are sort of that similar.
Yeah.
Have they reached their peak and they're going backwards?
I think... Arguably for Richmond, look, if their kind of dynasty is done and then it's time to start thinking about rebuild, they got their 3 flags on it. Like that's what you want.
Yeah.
Whereas the Cats, they kind of rolled the dice the last 2 years on firming up the list, and that list, and we say it's getting pretty old and it goes around the thing, but it does get to a point where, like, you know, the difference between 31 and 33, the toll that takes on the body, and like you're an incredibly super fit, like super durable player if you're still playing at 33. Yeah. And I just don't know that you can have...
Tommy Hawkins, what we said before, is 35.
As a key position forward, though, your body's not taking as much of a beat up as say, like a Selwood, or like the guy's got so much scar tissue, or it gets a cold wind and it just like opens him up. So, yeah, for me, if I had to say who has more chance of playing in a premiership this year, I would probably still say Richmond over the Cats.
I'd go Cats over Richmond.
I would go Geelong over Richmond.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Prove it. All right, what are we moving on to next?
VFLW. Buddy bet.
Huh?
Have you heard of Buddy bet?
Is that where you all put in?
It's what they call it, social media platform for gambling. So it's like you have a bet with each other and you put it in the app so you don't forget about it, and you put stakes, and then whoever wins,
is this a potential sponsor for us?
Oh, unsponsored.
We are still looking for sponsors.
But I can see myself.
6 weeks in, 200 views on YouTube, guys.
What do we need to do?
Not even a phone call in, Russ. No one's put a call in. Speaking of big wins, this is fast becoming my favourite segment because it's high flying, it's fast footy. VFLW girls again. Last week I came out, I said we're 2-0, our percentage is 1100, and everyone's talking about this is going to be the real week that we're tested against Carlton. They've just finished playing and the girls have come out and smashed them by 52 points. Ooh. 79-27. So if we are 10 goals or 9 goals ahead of a real testing team, we are looking the goods. We're now 3-0. I haven't updated the percentage, but it's still on that math. Got to be over 1,000.
Do you know how many rounds there are in the season?
No, I do not.
No.
Not for the VFLW. I'll go and do a bit more research. But they're flying. They are
absolutely
flying.
Yeah. And again, we talked about this last week. high-scoring footy is exciting to watch. So just as the brand, if we're talking about AFLW, like if we've got a side coming in next year that is, kicking bags of goals every single week, I think it's great. It's expectations, but I think it's like good expectations to have coming into next year.
It's exciting. Let's see what we're capable of at this level.
Definitely.
I had this in around the grounds for later, but the president came out and did a speech during the week, and the AFLW was a big thing he talked about. So Mr. Basher got on and said that the whole club's getting around the women's team. They're looking to redevelop Windy Hill a little bit more because the girls will be playing their AFLW games all at Windy Hill.
Oh, not the hangar.
Not the hangar. So they'll be looking to do some upgrades at Windy Hill for some better seating, awesome. Better amenities, because that's where they're going to be based out of.
I'd go
for matches.
I'd go for the game.
Absolutely.
I'd be interested to see. I know that they kind of toyed of like, do we keep it in the summer or do we play with the winter? Do you remember when you were a kid and you'd go to the footy and the reserves would play before the seniors game? So you could go to the game like 2 hours early and there's still a game of footy to watch. I wonder if that's something that's kind of getting thrown
curtain raiser.
So they've been saying that for a long time now, but yeah.
And like I said before, though, I actually do enjoy that it is over the off season because there's always at least some footy to watch.
Yeah.
So keep going, girls.
All pans out.
You're crushing it.
Alrighty, Russ.
Questions without notice.
Quick draw questions.
Quick draw questions.
Cowboy.
All right.
Question number 1. Is Jordan Ridley the most underrated player in the AFL currently?
Yes.
I say no.
I reckon he won a Crichton medal 2 years ago. The commentators don't they're like, oh yeah, he's doing his thing again. You don't hear him in any of the wrap-ups. Like, how much footy media do we all consume? Barely do I see the big wrap-up saying, Ridley standout game. Ridley. I know even in the own club, it's just like he's amazing. And no one from other clubs barely know who he is. Like a casual footy player would not know who Ridley is.
I disagree with that. I think when he won the Crichton, I was like very surprised that he won the Crichton. And he won the Crichton at like 19 as well.
It was his second season in football.
Yeah.
No one else did anything that year at all.
But I think since he won the Crichton, I definitely think he is getting much more attention, deservedly so. And I think his game has improved over the last 2 years as well. But I think that a lot of the commentary team understand that our back game plan relies on Jordan Ridley being able to float and direct and win the ball and hit up targets. Like I don't think it's like he's like a player that you are surprised when you see his name in the list and you ask who's that. I think he's pretty decently well known.
When he won the Crichton, and obviously he was contract was up. No one was saying...
No calls. Say it.
No calls.
No one put a call in.
But, trade periods, there's all this hype around X player is up for grabs. This person going to be after him. We're going to have to watch this space. No one really cared that he was up for contract negotiation.
But at that point, he's a 1 year junior player. Like, looking,
that had an amazing year that people put in... Saints put in a $450,000 bid for Draper. He hadn't even played a game yet.
Yeah, but Ruckman are much harder to come along than...
Anyway. When's the last time you saw an intercept mark like that come around? They could have gone for pretty cheap because no one was putting phone calls in.
Well, lucky he didn't. So maybe it all worked out the way it should have.
It's a discussion, you don't?
Yeah, I agree. I'm discussing.
Next question, Russ.
All right.
So you think he's underrated?
I think he's very underrated, and I don't think he gets the respect of the quality of player he is in the AFL system.
Well, we're going to come to Cal Toomey's top 50 players, and our man has topped the top 50.
Cal Toomey's a good Bombers man, though.
We'll come back to that.
Cal Toomey is known to be a biased Essendon pundit, which I have nothing to do.
I do enjoy a bias. That's
why I love Cal Toomey so much.
Coming back into frame, champ.
He's really excited. All right. All right. End of season. Do Bombers go after Dunkley again? He's out of contract this year. 2 years ago, we tried very hard. Luckily, we didn't throw the kitchen sink at him because we got 3 amazing players in that draft.
My answer is no. I think it was Dunkley or draft, and we went draft, and I think the time and probably the position that we want him to play is being filled.
Yep, no for me as well.
You don't think we need another big body in there?
I think we've got 17 of our list are big body mids.
I think 17 on our list are midfielders, not their big bodies. I think we've got a lot of short midfielders, which does worry me. But at the same time, like, when do you feel your need for a key position forward? Like, I would rather go after one of the King boys or someone we can get in the forward line. Suppose they're not as good as Jones.
Well, Jones got both ACLs.
But
intact.
I don't see them going for another midfielder. It's like, we've been there, we've tried that. No.
I think the question might be, if we got Dunkley, could he be a key position forward?
No.
Then that's the answer.
I still want him.
You still want him?
I still think we need another big, not necessarily midfield, because he goes forward a little bit too, but I think we need a big midfield player. We've got a lot of midfielders that are all sort of very similar body shapes and fast. I think we need a big-bodied midfielder in there.
Look, I think Draper is actually much more versatile than probably typical ruck stock. And I wonder if he can play both those roles of being, like, he's pretty good below his knees. He'll often, like, tap down and then get hands back and go forward. Like, he's pretty, like, can he play both roles?
I said Draper as, like, that Nick Nat type that's sort of, like, just, like, a competitive, like, animal. Like, that some of the tackles he lays... some of the clearances,
like a mumble in him.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of the clearances he gets, like, he just sort of grabs it, and it's almost like, what is he gonna do? And all of a sudden, he'll sprint out of
like a loaf of bread.
Yeah, he'll sprint out of the pack, and like you're forgetting Stringer plays that centre clearance role for us. You're forgetting Caldwell, Hobbs are these like midfield bulls that, even though they're small, if you look at last season, like Ollie Wines, really thick. Powerful midfielder. He's not like a 5 type. He's not like 6'6" like a Bont. He's just someone who's a little bit over. He's massive. Bont is huge. Same with Cripps. He's a player that's just like a little bit shorter, just over 6 foot, but commands like the ball. And I think we do have a couple of players like that now.
Okay.
We had an interesting chat off camera last week about the thing that you kind of miss about Hurley, and is that real mongrel.
We turned the cameras off too early.
Yeah, we should have let roll.
Gold after that.
And I think one of the comments we talked about was that incident where Zach Merritt pulled Nick Nat into his hand. And Nick Nat, who basically put him through the fucking fence into the third row.
Almost threw him out of the ground.
And I've been in a few games where there's been a bit of push and shove, and you can hear the crowd be like, "Get Draper in there." So I think he really does bring that, like, he is going to be front and center. And the thing I like, again, the Draper show, when we have a win and they show the camera in the rooms, he's having the most amount of fun out of anyone singing the song. Like, he fucking loves a win, And I think that when you talk about, again, culture, that's what you want. Like, he makes it fun. He's a guy that you want on your side because guys want to play with him,
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Andy Mcgrath, pick number 1 in the 2016 draft. That's a while back now. Was he the right number 1 pick for the Essendon Bombers?
Or who went 2 and 3?
So the guy from Brisbane, McCluggage.
McCluggage went 2, and then Taranto went 3, I think.
Yes, it was either those 2 players that maybe.
And there was a 3-way, like, they didn't know. Apparently, the word on the street is they didn't really know who they were going to take it out of all those top 3, and they made the decision the night before.
Look, I would say right now, Mcgrath is behind those 2 players, and I'm not saying by a lot, but I think
season.
I think it was crippled by last season, and I can see him taking a huge leap this year, easily into the top best 50 players in the comp.
I think McCluggage gets not dragged along, but he has great level of support. That I think when you're getting ball use from guys like Zorko and Lockie Neal and that sort of stuff, I think maybe sometimes that makes you look better than potentially you are. Whereas I think Mcgrath has often had to be that role where it's like, no, we need you to do that work. And he has had those runs with injury, so he hasn't had that real great consistent crack at it. But you guys both said last week, potential future captain. So you would have to argue that, like, he was exactly the pick.
Yeah, I reckon he's a little bit further behind some of the other guys. You look at the rest of the draft, it's pretty much a stinky year. I was going through the full draft list. There's no one in the top 20 that really stands out, or even the top 30 that really stands out in that draft year compared to the year before and a couple of years after that. When you have people like Sam Walsh come through and, some of the big draft guys in the last couple of years. But if you're drafting a captain to your club, I'd take someone who's maybe not at that elite level, who's a great leader, and that's justified to me.
Well, that's Heppel, in my opinion.
Yep.
Previously.
Yep.
All right, this is a little bit off topic from the Bombers, but with all the drama that's happened with West Coast pre-season, I know Caroline Wilson came out and said it's the worst pre-season she's ever seen for a club, an absolute disaster. Do you see West Coast being the new bottom spooners for this year? I know, who did we agree on at the end?
Adelaide. Lockie got his wish.
Absolutely not for Spoon. I think they've still got quite a few solid players. Like, if you look at their top 6 elite level players, I think injuries right now. I think Darling not getting his vaccination. I think
is that done? Has that been decided? He's on the list. He hasn't been in the club.
He missed the deadline to get the second jab.
So he's had one, but he won't get 2.
So supposedly.
I thought he said 0 because he's waiting for Moderna.
Well, so the story today was that he missed the deadline to get his second jab. Whether that means he hasn't had either of them or whether he's got his first one.
I think they needed to have their second last week to make round 1. But yeah, they're definitely not.
It's a no from me too. I think they're still just, like Lockie said, still got elite players and still hard to beat when you've got a home game that requires travel for me. Especially if you look at, they're going to, I don't know, actually haven't looked at their schedule, but presumably they're going to play the Adelaides, the Hawthorns, the Collingwoods at home at least once. And I think they'll be too good.
Yep, agreed.
And look, if Locke thinks Adelaide's only going to be good for 4 or 5 wins for the year at the most.
One win.
One win. So you've only got to have 2 wins then to not finish bottom.
All right.
There's nothing I enjoy more than interstate teams not making the 8 though.
Are we worried at all that we took both our final list spots on before the draft, before the team season starts, which means we're not eligible to go into the mid-season draft unless we retire someone?
I thought we still had a potential pick in the mid-season.
No, I think we had 2 spots left and we took Nick Martin as well.
So we were looking at only using one spot.
Yep, and you'd have that.
But the footy department did come out and say, look, if 2, because we had 4 blokes training with this, if 2 of them sort of stepped up, then we would give them both spots.
Yep.
Would be available.
I'm going to touch wood. But I think there's a chance that Hurley retires midway through the year and gives up that spot. And if we need to go to the draft, we go to the draft.
I reckon if it got to mid-year and we desperately need someone, that's a really good point. And I think he'd be the type of person to see that and put his hand up for early retirement. If he knew he wasn't going to maybe get back just for one game.
What was the name of the Richmond Ruck? Was it... what was his name?
I know you're
Richmond
talking
Ruckman
about,
that did it a few years ago.
Yeah, he retired early.
Halfway through the season, gave up his spot. I can't remember who they drafted with his spot. I think they went on and won the flag.
You know who got it? Made debut on grand final day.
Marlon Pickett.
Yeah.
Was that year?
Yeah.
What's his name?
That was 2019.
Moving on.
Yeah. I'll come back to me.
Yeah, Lockie.
All right, I would say with that sort of situation, I think they picked Nick Martin because he is a bit versatile. He can play that wing role. He can move forward, right? He's 191 centimetres, so he's actually a really good size. And then you go, well, we're starting the season without Tip and Woody. So it's like we need a small forward straight away, in my opinion. So I think we've gone the right route.
I think we picked up exactly what we were looking for.
Yep.
With the guys we picked up for pre-season.
I think they might just be looking at the list and being like, look how much depth we have this year.
Like if Tolls in for ruck, we've got like 5 ruckmen at the moment.
If the idea behind the mid-season draft is that you have a chance to replenish stock because of injury, they're probably rolling the dice, saying like, I think we've already got it.
Yeah.
Yep. Agreed.
And if there's an opportunity with 2 kids here that are both impressive and you can't split them, take them both.
All right, Russ. I want to wrap up your quick draw segment with a question of my own, and I just want to lead this with Cal Toomey coming out with his top 50 players, and I'll name the players to you, and I want you to pick one player from our Essendon list who you think will push into the top 50. Okay. Here's 4 of the players. Ridley, he ranks as 45th. Stringer as 26th. Parrish as 22nd. And Merritt as 12th. What player on our list do you think would push into the top 50?
I'll give you a smoky. I reckon Draper's going to push up. I reckon he's going to have a breakout year this year. Maybe do have that sort of like you spoke about, be like a Grundy, maybe a Max Gawn type of player. Actually get into the midfield, actually take some more possessions, maybe kick some more goals. I know a lot of the people reckon that he could be top 3 ruckman by the end of the year.
All-Australian, I think, is the goal.
And if he gets that All-Australian, gets into that sort of top 3 in ruckman, I see he's definitely in the top. He has to be in that top 50 list. So that's my smoky for this year.
I like it. Benny?
I think if we're going to play the game that we think we're going to play, then it's going to require Mcgrath and Hine to both have huge years off the half-back line. And I think if they're having huge years and we're winning games, they become pretty hard to overlook.
Yeah, good call.
Absolutely.
Got one for you.
Oh, all right.
If Melbourne go on and win another premiership,
Yep.
can Sam Draper get the All-Australian ruck call-up ahead of Max Gawn?
No.
If they finish premiers but don't win the flag?
See,
Well, it's done before the premiership anyway.
Is it?
All-Australian,
yes, it is.
It's
Right.
done before.
If they win a premiership.
Okay, so I see a few players ahead of Draper at the moment. So you would have to pass Nick Nat, you'd have to pass Gawn, you'd have to pass Grundy. There's 3 clear ruckmen.
Who went up to GWS after he'd been to like 4 different clubs and then being like one of the best recruit of the year?
Mumford?
No.
Big
He went from St Kilda, he went somewhere. No, he went to Sydney, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Vardy, not Vardy.
No,
he's got the beard
curly hair.
and the beard.
You know what I'm talking about, though.
Yeah.
He's been a
He's played at 4 teams and never played in Victoria.
Yeah.
Oh, he played at
He
Saints.
played for Port.
No, I don't think he played Port, West Coast, and Sydney.
Yeah, it was like his 5th or 4th club.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
He had a great year last
Yeah.
year. But so I would say there's 3, if not 4 or 5 players at ruckman ahead of Draper right now.
Yeah,
It's going to kill me until we remember that, guys. As soon as we hit stop,
we'll think about it. So I think it'd be very hard for him to push into the top 2. Occasionally they do pick 2 ruckmen, so I don't think he's at that level
Phillips.
in the next year or 2. I think in a couple of years, definitely, I'd like to think that he's capable or on that trajectory.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends where it finishes. But if West Coast capitulate and finish 17th, the Pies finish 16th, I think that probably takes Nat Nui and Grunt, especially if we finish top 6, knocking on the door of top 4.
Yeah, Grundy's had a couple of difficult years the last 2 years. Like he's been on downward.
Well, I think he struggled. He's one of those players that really struggled a lot with hub life, and he's one of those guys that doesn't love 24/7 footy.
Yeah.
And as we've sort of said, it would have been quite a emotionally draining experience to be not able to get away from it for such an extended period of time.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Great segment. I like that segment. Quick draw questions.
Rus.
But you should have to finger gun as you. Around the grounds, final thoughts, things that we've seen on the Bombers. I've got one big announcement for all the Truth Bombers podcast fans. We're going to start a footy tipping competition. I'm going to put a link to that in the description.
Nice.
And we'll decide on prizes, but I think there'll probably be a few Canadian Club and Dry
Whoa, we're not sponsored by
6-packs, and when we finally get around to some Truth Bombers merch as well, there might be a few bits of merch flying around. So if you're out there and you're listening and you enjoy footy tips, check out the description below.
I'm going to try and not go. So I went tried to get an early lead last year, and I've gone into an early.
Oh,
deficit.
you were taking pot shots, like
I was
praying for upsets from round 4.
Round 1, I think I was at 4 decisions behind everyone. I was like double down in round 2, down about 8.
Yeah, just keep going. You got to keep going. Any other news? Anything else going on? Anything that you've spotted up?
I think we've covered everything, Russ.
I kind of merged my around the grounds in with everything else. So.
We didn't talk about Champion Data. I know you're a big Champion Data fan. Was there anything that you wanted to say on that?
Nothing prepared, no. Maybe next week. We had it prepared last week and we ran out of time.
It's all right.
It's a good
We're
episode,
trying to get these episodes to go shorter and shorter. They keep going longer and longer, which is good. I feel
So
like
Saints this week?
all gelling. Saints on the 5th, which is
Saturday night.
Ooh.
yeah. Are tickets available for that? Oh,
Yes.
Dean's wedding.
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah, it's deep.
Does
It's down the
the
road,
leave
though.
and come back? Yeah, it's in Port Melbourne.
It's in Port Melbourne.
Anyhow. But yeah, we'll definitely be chatting about that one next Sunday.
Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, boys.
See you guys.
Yeah, that was good.
I love how Russ's computer died 5 minutes in. He still had it open and fiddling around with it.
It's holding cheap.